Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for taking the time to join us for our 18th webinar in the Zeald series, Keep Calm and Get Digital. My name is Lisa and I'll be your moderator for today's webinar. We are at alert level 0 and alert level 1 and 0 cases. Well done, New Zealand, for pushing through and doing what some thought was impossible. And also congratulations to all of you who have been attending these webinars and equipping yourself and your business with knowledge to adapt, evolve and survive through the COVID-19 pandemic. The beauty of digital transformation, though, is that it is not a one-time thing. It is something that is ever changing, and there are always opportunities to improve or change what digital strategy you are doing for your business. Today's topic, marketing automation for e-commerce, will take you through some simple and advanced ways in which you can be looking to automate your marketing. We know the more tools you can make work for you in your digital journey, the more you can progress in digital transformation. Our speaker today, Bruce, has a strong passion for digital and sharing his digital knowledge with others. I know I have personally learned a lot from his insights, and his marketing automation presentation today will be sure to get you thinking about the future of your business's digital journey. Just a little bit of housekeeping as well. If you haven't joined us before, I'll quickly run over the tools on the Zoom. So we do have the chat facility where you can ask any questions you have while in the webinar. We also have a Q&A section at the end of the webinar where you can use the Q&A button or the chat button to be asking these questions, and we'll answer them in this session. Also, if you can't hear us right now, there is audio settings down in the bottom left here, and clicking onto those and just playing around with them will probably get you to hear what we're talking about. So for now, I hope you enjoyed today's session, and I will now invite Bruce to take over and take us through. Oh, you're on mute, Bruce.
There we go. How's that? Nice and
good.
clear?
That's good. Thank you.
And I'll just share with you and kick this off.
Awesome.
There we go. There we go. Okay, marketing automation for e-commerce. So today what we're going to cover, just get through the little effects here, is that we'll give you a quick overview of what it's all about and why you should care, how to use it to your advantage. And then we'll follow up with 5 tips. Probably there's so much you can do with marketing automation. So we're going to give you 5 tips to get started. Probably the most profitable of those things you can be doing. It's more like a quick start type strategy. So what it is, it's all about event-based triggers. So an event-based marketing model. So if you think about the different ways there is for someone to, the different touch points for your business, right from first hearing about you or seeing you on YouTube, all the way through an e-commerce site, all the different pages, right down through to the emails, to the checkout, and then even what happens after checkout. All of those engagements with your business are an event. And when an event takes place, you can then put in place a trigger, which is a programmatic trigger. And around that, you can then have a follow-up sequence basically to each one of those events. So on the right, I've just got a few examples here of just different ones that I just screenshotted these from a typical software. You've got people subscribing. We've got here entering your sales pipeline, making a purchase. Each one of these is a typical type of event, and there are hundreds of these, and in some businesses it could be thousands of them. So it's really important to before you start to just have a clear strategy in which ones are going to be the most important. So to explain it in a little bit more depth, I've decided to just go with a webinar funnel. Obviously there's hundreds of different funnels that we can go, but webinar is a great example of just a few top level examples of where marketing automation can help you. So obviously you're currently attending a webinar, and the webinar itself is an event, but on the lead up to the webinar and even after the webinar, there's more events, little micro events that occur. Okay. There we go. And for each one of those, we can create an automation around that. So for example, for this webinar, you may have received an email to register. That itself is an event. If you clicked on the link, that could be tracked. So we knew that someone was interested. We'd also know if someone opened that email. And if they didn't, we might set off an automation to send another one. For example, if the email was sent in the morning, someone had not opened it and not registered, then that evening maybe just resend it and send it to them. That's a very simple example of how to use it, but it's a great way of showing how automation can save you time. Now, the warning here is that as we go down these examples, it's down the rabbit hole and further and further and further down the rabbit hole when you get into marketing automation. So as part of getting an overview about it, I think it's really good advice to warn people that you want to be very clear on your strategy and which different events for an e-commerce business matter the most. So we'll go a few examples here, which is right message, right person, right time. This is really what we're trying to do with your marketing automation. If you're thinking, what am I going to automate? What we want to do is give people the feeling that you haven't screamed out at them with a megaphone in a crowded room, but you've come up, you've touched them on the shoulder and you've introduced yourself. And that's the sort of feeling we want to give your marketing. We don't want it to have the blasted out effect, but at the same time, we don't also want it to have, when it's done badly, it has a really creepy effect as well. So we want to find a middle ground there and just do it very, very well. So in a typical digital transformation for a company into marketing automation, you might be here or you might be further down, but here is, you've got an email marketing system and you're probably sending out to the entire list. You might even have a few different lists, but normally you'd have, okay, we've got a great offer coming up, say a Mother's Day sale or something like that. You click send, it goes out to the entire list and it's one offer. The next level up is when we start to segment that audience, and we can do that by what they're clicking on their way through to a sale. There are different opportunities. If they've clicked something, we know what they're interested in. The next level up is where we start to look at their behaviors as a whole. So are they consuming content? We're starting to look at things like if they watched a video, did they watch it all the way through or did they drop out at a particular point in time? And if they did, maybe what do we do after that? What types of content on the site do they really like? And if we understand that, what should we follow up with? What products would make a nice offer to the people and what they're looking at on the site? And the last one is the predictive personalization. So just don't worry about it. It's you'll see that's Amazon and Spotify, but this is probably the level that you don't even need. But unless you had massive volumes, you might get a lift from doing this type of stuff. But otherwise, you probably hear it a lot and see a lot of people talking about it. But it's not going to make a big difference in your business. What these guys are doing is they're learning all this stuff above here about their customers, and then they're also changing their website and their offers based on what they know, and using machine learning to even predict what people will do. We're not going to talk about that today because there's a lot of opportunity just sitting here as you get started. So we'll get into that. So back to the webinar example. If we go a little bit further down the rabbit hole, we know next would be someone opted in for the webinar. So it gives us a little bit of information here that we can use. So for today, you might have had a Zoom registration. We can now send that back to either your CRM or your email marketing system and just tag somebody in your database with a little bit of information. So it might be this person was an attendee, and that can be useful next time because we know now that you were interested in marketing automation. Next time we might have some useful videos or content or an offer that has potential that obviously someone who comes to the webinar is the most likely person in that entire list to, I guess, engage with whatever we send them. And they start to add up. So that is just, so far we've had a couple of little events, but over a period of time, we can really start to design a strategy, improve your marketing around all the little events along the way. Okay, the next one is that now you're at the webinar. And so we know now that you actually showed up, which we can tag in the database. And we know what you're engaged with. So these types of ones here are useful. What type of questions people asked during a webinar, what those questions were. These, not necessarily everything in your marketing automation has to be used for sending someone a message. So these ones, I wouldn't go back to someone and say, hey, because you asked this question, here's this particular ad. I think that's where it starts to get creepy. You would start to use this type of information for your own product development, for your own content strategy on your website, for those types of things. But this was just an example to show that you're collecting a lot of useful information along the way. And there's two things you can do with it. One is you can either consider it as a trigger, which is going to activate some marketing, or you might consider it as what they call metadata, which is information about your audiences you can store and use for other purposes. Okay, so here's an example. Let's go through of what we can do if someone didn't show up to the webinar and what could be automated. So the thing is, if someone hasn't, we can say, okay, maybe there's an encore presentation, so we're going to show it again, really. And this time we're going to do it in the evening because last time morning sessions were not as good for people. So with that, you notice here, I deliberately didn't even put in someone's name, because with that little few sentences there, we're able to do a few things through automation. Firstly, it's timely because they just missed the webinar or couldn't make it on the day. It's specific to them because it's all about missing the webinar, and it's directed at them. So this is a really good example of how to do marketing automation the right way. There we go. And then we get one further down. Just stick with me for a little bit. This is why we're talking about going down the rabbit hole, is that did people actually come and watch the replay? And if they did, how far did they get into the video? Because for a lot of people in a webinar, there might be an offer at the end of it. And some webinars can be quite long. They can be an hour and a half. And the last 15 minutes of that webinar is actually where the offer is. So there's a big chunk of that where people will be dropping out. So what you could do, knowing this information, is that you might say, okay, everyone between 20 minutes and through to the time that offer started, which in that scenario is about 45 minutes of video, we're going to segment them out, put them into a different audience, and we're going to show them a cut down version of the webinar. So that would basically guarantee that they're going to get through to your offer in that scenario. Let's do that. Okay. So the best use is to take something that's already effective, a business that's effective, and make it more effective. You're not going to necessarily just jump into automating something which is never done before. You probably want to follow the principles of a minimal viable product. So firstly, just test the marketing, make sure it's working, and then we use marketing to get more out of what you've already got. That's the purpose of the automation. So it's the reverse of peeling an onion. What we're doing here is we're starting with the middle, and then we can just keep adding more and more layers to the marketing strategy and to the sophistication of it. But you don't start with all of those layers. You can start very basic and just keep building upon it. So I'm going to give you my top 5 that in terms of getting started. These ones are basically chosen because they're the most likely to generate profit, and they're ideal for an e-commerce website. one is the abandoned shopping carts. So if you're not doing this already, it's always a very quick, simple and easy win. The way you do this too is the most probable buyer. They've come all the way through your sales funnel. They've got right to the end. And then for some reason or other, they've decided not to purchase. And you can't assume that it was necessarily just because they didn't like the product. It could be they got a phone call at the time and just got distracted and the cart timed out, which can happen. The 4-year-old could have been running around with the wallet using the credit card as a frisbee. You know, there's all sorts of different scenarios that go on in houses that you don't, so don't just necessarily assume that. Here's just a quick email of how you would go about notifying someone. So you would just usually a good approach is to assume that something went wrong with your site, so it wasn't at their end, and then that you give them some options in the email to either come back and buy or to make a phone call. Just depends on the sophistication of your e-commerce system and what it can do, but it's quite an easy one to write. And with these campaigns, there's just a few things to take note of. So to do it properly, one is to reference the item that they're trying to buy when we send them an abandoned shopping cart email. The reason is don't try and start selling things that they didn't add to their cart. It might sound obvious, but just don't go there, and I don't think it's legal to do so. The other one is 3 emails over 48 hours as a maximum, but typically you would do one maybe 30 minutes later, and then later on that day, and then sometime the next day, and mix up the times, because you don't want the exact same times. If someone didn't read the emails at a particular time, they may be busy at that time every day. So we'd mix it up. And the other one is to make sure that also it can trigger off via Facebook and Google. So in this particular, if someone's abandoned the cart, they're going to get emails and they're going to get Facebook ads and they're going to get Google ads. And so you might be thinking there, it's go, wow, that's way too much. It's not really. It's not, because the first assumption is there's that I've created 3 emails and I've got all this marketing going, that they're actually paying attention to that. And they're not. They really don't care at all. So if you can get 1 in 10 of those to get someone's attention, you've done a good job. So all of this can be triggered, set up and triggered off the back of an abandoned shopping cart. Next one, email welcome campaigns. So these are my favorite. So I'm just going to open it all up. This happens either in 2 scenarios in an e-commerce website. One is that they've just bought something, you said thank you very much. If you didn't have any way of gathering an email up to that point, that email, you still want to start to focus around a little bit of introduction to your brand and what you're all about. For some others, you may have what's called a lead magnet, and there might be a bit of information that someone can download along the way. And if that's the case, the first thing you want to as well is what's called a welcome campaign. Different things in that strategy. It's usually about 3 emails, but it's an introduction to you, what they can expect from you in future, and it just sets the tone of what they can expect from you in emails, which in turn will improve your open rates. If you just start sending them offers straight away, they really will start to ignore them. So what we're going to do as part of that welcome strategy is to say, hey, we're going to send you a little bit more content. So say for an e-commerce website, I put down an example here. If you were selling, say, for example, wetsuits, there's 3 different types of content you could send them. What we've got here in this example is, hey, you can expect this over the next few days, and we're going to send you our best of the best content. If it was wetsuits, I might send them something on spearfishing, something on free diving, and something on scuba diving. So I've sent them 3 different articles. If they click those links in the email and go to either of those, they're also by chance major categories in my e-commerce store. They have then told me what they wanted the website for, what the wetsuit for, which I didn't know previously. They've started to tell me their interests. Now they may go and look at all of it, which is fine as well, but it starts to, every single thing that they tag and go and look at in those articles can then be used to either improve my follow-up messaging or improve the offers that I send to people. Because remember, the end goal here is to achieve something where we've tapped them on the shoulder to introduce ourselves, rather than giving the feeling I've just blasted out to my list everything and I'm just guessing here and hoping you're going to click something in this email and buy it. The other thing too is similar to the shopping cart, abandoned cart, that when they're going to these particular types of content is that we're automatically pixeling those people and we can remarket to them based on the content that they've looked at. So they can see the ads at the same time. Here is dynamic remarketing. So if you're doing e-commerce, you should be doing this. What it is the use of your feeds. So if you have pretty much any e-commerce site these days, I mean, e-commerce platforms should have some sort of product feed. And using that product feed, you can then load that into Facebook, into Google. And what it does mean is that when someone comes to a page on your site and they're looking at a product, it will then show that back to them when they're on Facebook or Google. So in this example, I like this one from Facebook where they show a carousel. I think that can be 5 images. But if I'd looked at 4 images, 4 different products on their website, they can now show them back in the remarketing while you're on Facebook. The same applies to Google as well, and they can show it back in lots of locations. For example, in YouTube, on display networks and in search, they can show dynamic remarketing. You can, sorry, they don't show it in search, only in display on that. But what they are doing with these feeds as well, these are going to grow a lot in future. So there's definitely something you need to implement, is that Google are offering the ability to do one-click purchases and things like that now based on that. So they've purchased off you on the website. This is only being tested in the States at the moment, but it will eventually get to New Zealand. That once you've done that, you can show them other products which they can click on and purchase, but also one-click subscriptions. So you could imagine if they come to the website and they'd purchased a natural herb or a supplement or something like that, is that the next ad that they see through the remarketing gives them the ability to have that delivered once a month. So this is definitely going to get bigger, and just something to keep an eye on. And it's also an instant win. This type of reminder, you can expect a 5 to 10% lift in overall revenue by just implementing this. Automatically populating your audiences. So open this all up there. Okay, so these are the 4 main audiences I'd say get going straight away in Facebook, so that you can use them in your marketing. So these will automatically populate. The first one is if they visited your website. 188 days is a suggestion. It's not critical. If you thought 7 or 30 was better, just do it. But you need these ones because these are all your best buyers. Next one is if they've been to your Facebook business page, your email list. Okay, so a lot of people still not doing this. You can export it into Facebook manually, but now you can automate all of this. So one tool that does it is Zapier, and a lot of your email marketing systems now do that as well. So you should be constantly updating this list, because that's going to improve the scope of what Facebook can target for you. And you can also use this to go tell Google and Facebook to go and find more people just like these audience. The last one here is the unsubscribes. Most people don't realize this is an option, but when someone unsubscribes from your list, you can then still profit from them, which is useful. But you can also people can be unsubscribed without knowing it as well. So different email systems have different rules, and there's also rules that could be programmed in by someone else in the business. So for example, someone may not have opened an email in 3 months, and the system has automatically unsubscribed them. So what you should do is take that list, get it into Facebook, automate the process, and just see how it goes. Send some ads to that list. Usually you'll find that there's good result from doing that. And yeah, so for the last one, because this is a quick presentation, 20 minutes, we're going to give a quick overview of putting it all together. The next screen might be a little bit intimidating, but it's not that bad. So what this is this would be a full funnel marketing system, and this is designed for marketing automation to take advantage and automatically take advantage of different people at different stages of the journey, all the way through to checkout and upsell and thank you. So to explain this, and it explains all the different events and triggers as well that can happen along the way. So the first one is, this is the most common way of prospecting these days, is a video ad. So you might go, a product demonstration is you pretty much can't beat that, but you might have a number of videos that are out there. A good combination as well is testimonial, product demonstration, then another testimonial. That's a good formula. What we're doing when you're doing this in Facebook or in YouTube is that we're tracking as an event how far someone got through the ad. So if they watched it all the way through and then clicked on, yeah, I want this product, that's great, that's ideal, and we'd send them straight to the product page. But that's going to be maybe 5 to 10% of your market who are ready to buy right now. There's another 60% who are, kind of thinking about it. So we need a strategy and marketing automation strategy to deal with that. So what we do is, if they didn't watch all of these videos, we send them to different things. So here it might be they've only watched 50% and it was maybe a 2-minute product demo. So what we can do is send them across to what's called a pre-sell page. But really we're just re-educating and restating a lot of the stuff that you're trying to do in these videos, because people react in different ways to different types of content. So the video, which usually works the best, but there's other people might come here, they might prefer to read all about it, and others might really prefer a lot of data and to make a decision. Depends what the product is. They might just want to see a lot of specs and things like that. So we'd send them to here. If they didn't proceed through the site, then we'd start remarketing to them. And again, that's all automated. Otherwise, if they did through to this product page, that's when, again, we've got more automation. At that point, we're talking about that dynamic remarketing that we talked about just kicking in. Here we're talking about abandoned shopping cart automation, which was just discussed. Take them through to checkout. Here, after they've done that, there's another automation that can go that can automatically help you upsell. And that would be people who bought X are most likely to buy Y in terms of the product. So knowing that, we can then push them through to these types of products. And then of course you've got the thank you, and back to that content strategy that I was talking about. So your first time buyer comes through, we start to learn more about them through other types of content on the website. And that would then inform us when we go back to here and start all over again with the next product that goes through. So another good example here of this type of pre-sell page, because this is the ones that confuse most store owners, because e-commerce, it doesn't have to be complicated. It's, I've got a product. There's a lot of people out there typing in, I want this product, and we're sending them to that page. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's a good strategy. And you take that as far as you can. This here is if you want to go a little bit bigger on that, because that will only get you so far. So for here, if I was selling clothes, this one here might be, here's a winter style guide. And they've come into that page. And on that style guide, I've then directed the males one direction and the females another direction. So then when they on those two particular pages, I might offer different types of styles and products that they can click on, which then take them through to this type of page here. So that's just one example of it. It doesn't have to be this exact same sequence, but what we're doing is automating our marketing to people based on their consumption of content here. And it will, if it's set up correctly, it allows you to scale. So one person who did this is Cindy Joseph, has a website called Boom by Cindy Joseph. They're doing 50 million a year now in terms of turnover for women's makeup. And they started a company which was just a couple of million. So they're doing okay, but that's what I'm talking about, marketing automation taking you from being effective to very effective. You wouldn't want to try and set all this up manually. Once it's, you want to use the automation to your advantage. And I think that is it in terms of question.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Bruce. I know I've certainly picked up a few things that I hadn't thought about before, but you've definitely got it down with, I guess, our webinar example. So yeah, everyone, if you do have any questions, please feel free to right now send them through the Q&A or the chat, and we'll be able to ask them to Bruce. But to start everyone off on this area, I guess one of the questions is for some people who are joining us on the webinars, they're really at the start of their digital marketing. So, you know, obviously having things automated, they might be feeling would really progress them forwards, but it's so huge. Where best should they really start? If it's just one thing they can do, what would that be?
If it's the one thing that'll make them the most money, I'd say it would be the dynamic remarketing on the website, the products, and it's fairly quick to set up. That there's not a lot of strategy involved. It's really set up some tags and click a few check boxes depending on the system, and then we can get that rolling in Facebook or Google or both.
Fantastic. And I guess you've given some good tips here today, so they can always go back and watch the webinar to get a couple of those groups they could be looking at as well. I guess another side of automation is sometimes people do think it will cost a lot of money overall, because it's, again, taking a process that someone used to manually have to do, making it automated, and people's budgets might not be that large. So are there huge costs associated to it, or where are the costs really?
Yeah. So there's 3 levels. So what I've given today was, even with that last funnel, is probably a starters package, but that could, everything that I just showed in that last funnel could be achieved with a e-commerce system and something like MailChimp. To be done. Awesome. There's very little that needs to be done there, but you can start to, where you go next is something more like a lead management system. They call themselves CRMs, but they're technically not, but everyone likes to use terms that they don't apply to them. So they that would be the guy Active Campaign, HubSpot, those types of ones. ConvertKit and Drip kind of just in there, but what they allow is a lead management process, and when someone's coming through that lead management process, there are also additional triggers that can be activated. And then the final sort of solution is where you've got e-commerce and CRM all in one. That's the big boys, and you need to be 7 figures turnover to really justify using those, and that's where you've got your purchase history stored with your customer data, and that becomes really powerful. That's when you start to associate those all sorts of automations based off those 2 things. And those types of systems have sort of inbuilt tools like recency, frequency, monetary value, those types of analysis. But that, again, skip that for today, because unless you've got good volume, that type of analysis won't do a lot for you. So I'd focus on, you can get started with the e-commerce system in MailChimp, which I think is free, isn't it, for 2,000 on the list?
There's a small list that's free depending on how much you're sending, and then the costs start after that. So yeah, no, that certainly is one of the platforms I know that gets used quite a lot. I guess with tip number 5, you sort of go and put it all together, and quite a lot of the diagrams, I guess, is showing the loops and how it can go from one stage to the next.
Yeah.
Is marketing automation an all or nothing type function, or can you just sort of put bits and pieces that will work best for you, or maybe be what you know you could do right now?
Yeah, you start with what you know what works and the resources you've already got and content you've already got. So that's what we meant by the reverse of the onion. You just go in a few layers and keep adding. So you would just pick, it's the 80-20 rule. You're just going to go in and pick your biggest win and start there. So where that most likely is in the email communications early on. Usually not enough communication, and then and in some of those automated automations off the back of products and a purchase. So it really is those 5 things that we mentioned today.
I do agree, though, in particular with emails. I know when I've made a purchase and then afterwards I get a nice little email, and then maybe a few days later an email, and it's sort of, sometimes there might be a small 10% off if I go back and repurchase. I know that a lot of the time that works, on me at least. Not quite sure if that's a good or a bad thing, but you know, it does make you look, and I guess sometimes, I mean, some people might be expecting it as well, almost.
Oh, definitely. I do that. I always, I'll drop out to see if there's a discount. but and that's part of your strategy as well, as in that funnel that I showed, is that as you get further and further down the funnel, your marketing can be more and more aggressive. So when someone's right at that end point of almost purchase and just didn't click the button, that's the time to give them the 10%. But some sites you turn up and you're a cold, you just turned up from an ad and they're already offering you 5% on the homepage to join the email list, and those types of things I don't think are needed at that point. With marketing automation, you'd be able to determine the best time to start showing that the way through.
Yeah. And I guess, like you said, it is that aggression. I know Rhonda, who sits on the panelists at times. She did get annoyed at once because it was a smaller company. She was putting an order through, and she got an email saying, "Oh, if you order again within the next hour or two, you'll get this discount, but after that, it's gone." And it was just sort of like, okay, well, I didn't know that, and now that I do, I don't really want to make another order straight away. So I guess there's finding that good median there, and if it's not something where I guess you're at the larger end and it's a smaller business, not being too aggressive, right?
Yeah. There are a few funnels that you can implement around that type of thing on the way out, but it's probably more suited if you've got a catalog or something like that of products. That type of funnel wouldn't suit. If you've got just a few products or one main offer, that's when that sort of works the best in terms of that. Yeah.
Fantastic. Cool. So I don't think we've got any further questions for today, but sure, everyone can jump on and always, get in touch if there was anything in the future. But so what I will do for now is just recap on today's webinar. So what we know right now is all eyes are in New Zealand because we have moved into alert level 1 and we are at 0 cases. And I guess really where to from here is how we progress and continue to adapt, evolve and survive in the next year. It certainly will be an interesting journey for all, and I'm sure right across the world there will be comments on what we did and didn't do right. But let's worry about our own businesses instead of what the world's saying about New Zealand. So what we know are malls are starting to claim that they are close to experiencing normal visitor numbers again. However, people I've spoken to have also said a lot of people are window shopping and not going into stores, so that's also interesting. But businesses who have come online through the last few months in order to continue to deliver have seen the power of what a website can do in the online e-commerce world. So with that, they might not be only resorting to their website as being their one place of business, but looking for it to be a strong part of their strategy moving forward. So the opportunity here is that in introducing automation into your digital journey, it will give you more time to focus elsewhere in the business, especially if you are someone who has to go back to running a storefront. So this can just be ticking away in the background while you're, servicing the customers there. Prediction is that those businesses that do continue to work on their online experience and customer journey by using strategies mentioned today will more likely be successful than those that do nothing. And my recommendation for today, I seem to always keep it short, is be proactive, not reactive. So while some steps have been taken, while some have taken time to get their business online in some way or another, others have not even started. So no matter where you are in your digital journey, just make sure you're doing a little bit at a time to keep progressing it. Don't just stop. And a little bit about Zeald. So Zeald has helped over 15,000 businesses transform digitally over the last 20 years. If you would like support in setting up marketing automation or even getting an idea around a potential digital strategy for your business, then please do get in touch. We provide a free strategy or website audit session with one of our experienced digital business strategists. Also, after this webinar, we will be sending you out a feedback form. So if you could please fill it in with any suggestions for future webinars or what you did or didn't like about today's one, that would be great so we can continue delivering quality content to you. Our next webinar is next Wednesday, the 17th at 2 p.m. It is myself and Jara Borman will be joining you for that, and we're covering off website security, so keeping your customers' data safe. I'd like to say another very special thanks to our presenter today, Bruce. Really appreciate what you've taken us through. Like I said, I've learned a bit more today myself, and I think it's really quality advice that you've provided people to sort of keep them moving in that digital space. As some of you may know, and some of you may not, we have launched a Get eCommerce Movement, so GEM initiative. This is where we're providing a free website e-commerce build, so a base build around that, and it's a free hosting for 12 months with only a success fee that you would need to pay on purchases there. If you also know of anyone that might benefit from attending these webinars in the future, please feel free to share it with them. Otherwise, you'll find this webinar up on our YouTube channel later today. Other than that, thank you very much for attending today. Enjoy the rest of your day and look forward to seeing you here next week.